Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Meepleville Meets. Today, we have a very special guest just recovering from a serious diagnosis. So let's just get into it. Let's please welcome John Zinser from AEG. Hello,
Hi,
John.
Tim. How you
How you doing?
doing?
Good, thank you. How you doing?
I am doing great.
Yeah,
Surprisingly great for what I have gone through in the last 2 months.
yeah, that is so really, really good to hear. I'm so glad that you are doing well. And I just want to go ahead and start with that. But I just want to let the viewers know, first of all, that John and I have been friends for a while, and he moved to Vegas within the past year. And I had asked him just before the diagnosis about doing an interview. And so now that he's healthy and stuff, we came back, and here he is. So we're going to find out all about it. So John, tell us, how did this get discovered? What was leading up to where all of a sudden you were diagnosed with this?
So about 6 weeks ago, right around Father's Day, I had a meeting with one of my staff members that was supposed to take 10 minutes, and then which took an hour. And I was acting sort of strangely at home, and my family, who had sort of gathered for Father's Day, were like, "Well, you're acting, really weird." And so Taylor had talked to my employee, called Taylor and said, "I just had an hour-long meeting with John that should have taken 10 minutes. Is he okay?" And so we sort of agreed that I should head to the emergency room and see if there was a problem. And I went to the emergency room and got a CAT scan, and they told me that I had a brain tumor. So the next day, they kept me in the hospital, and the next day they brought in a surgeon, and I had an emergency surgery for the brain tumor.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to. So when you said, like, for example, a 10-minute meeting took an hour, did you notice anything?
I didn't remember. I don't even remember the meeting. So I don't remember most of the things that happened on that day leading up to my going to the emergency room, but I remember sort of all the emergency room stuff to a point, like where I got told about, like they brought me out a camera, and the lady was like, "I'm sorry to tell you, you got a brain tumor." And Julie had left. She had to come back home because she had some things to do. And I called her up, and I'm like, "Bring me a go bag. I've got a brain tumor."
But so when you said that day, you don't remember much, like, of the meeting and all that kind of stuff. So was it sort of instantaneous? Like, what about the day before that meeting? You know what I mean?
So I think that I've been affected by that I was affected by the tumor for at least as long as I've been in Vegas. So I would say from we got here in October. I would say from January on, I've been affected because, so I love work. I love working from home, and I didn't really have any motivation when I moved here to sort of really dig in and get back to work. I was doing a couple hours work a day. And then I was, sort of wandering off and watching television. It was, and I thought, well, I've got the COVID blues, right? Like the being on lockdown is really affecting me.
Right.
And it turns out that wasn't the case, but because, in the last 3 weeks, I've got a real itch to get back to work. And like my wife constantly comes in and she's like, "Are you going to stop doing what you're doing now? Are you working, or are you futzing?" And I'm like, "I'm working."
Good. Well, I'm glad you're back. That's really good that you're, getting back to 100%. But still, I'm just intrigued because, so it must have been minor then. So when you first moved to Vegas, you just noticed that you sort of a change. You thought it might have been the COVID blues, whatever. So did you start to feel, so you actually felt there was some change going on, and did other family members sort of see that little by little as well?
Yeah, they did. So I felt that there was a little something off, but I never would have thought for, ever that it was a tumor. And again, I don't like they said it was a slow growing tumor that started growing fast. So you can see the scar on my head. So what they did to fix is they did a thing called a craniotomy, which they cut me from here all the way over to here, and then they kind of do the face-off thing where they peel down my forehead, and then they took a square of my skull out, which I hope this isn't too graphic, but and then they sucked out the tumor, and then they put the square back. And I didn't realize that that's what had happened, because now I've got an indentation on my head here and I can feel something underneath my skin. And then when I asked the doctor about it, I'm like, can you tell me about what happened and what the surgery was and what is going on here? And he's like, well, that's a pin that we had to put in to sort of hold to hold your skull in place. I'm like, he says, that's part of the new you. I'm like, okay, awesome.
So it's sort of like Frank and John in a sense, right?
Frank and John, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. And there was absolutely no pain at all. Like,
it was weird. So I did not have any pain prior to the surgery. I didn't have any like shooting pains in my head. I didn't have any uncomfortable, weirdness, just some memory loss and some issues with having conversations. And then when I went in for this, I did the surgery and I got out, and the next day I woke up in the recovery room. I couldn't talk for like 6 days. Julie says that like they would get me on video and they'd talk and I'd like shake my head and like I just couldn't say anything. I mean, my first words after 6 days were, they're like, "Are you feeling okay?" And I was like, "I am." They have that taped, right? So it was the recovery was slow and then it was fast. So each day after that, while I was in the hospital, I improved enough for them to not send me to a rehab facility, to send me home. And once I talked to you early on when I was home, and I was texting with you, and I improved 100% every day. Like every day I got better. And so it took like 3 days before I was off the walker, and it took 3 weeks before I was able to do normal things around the house, and I was itching to get back to work. So
right. Yeah. So that's good that you had a really good recovery period. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to ask also, but I also want to know, because again, this is sort of like a very, a diagnosis nobody ever wants to hear. So could you just tell me, like, the second or whatever, the moment the doctor or whoever informed you, can you just walk us through a little bit? Like, how did that feel? Like, what did you think?
I under normal circumstances, I would have been terrified. I am afraid of my own shadow when it comes to my health. And I think that the tumor was suppressing the fear portion of my brain or something, because I was told, and I didn't feel anything. I just called my wife and said, I have a tumor. I'm going to have to stay. And it, weirdly enough, I didn't have any dire feelings. And when I woke up in the recovery room, I didn't feel weird or bad either. I didn't feel like that recovery wasn't going to happen, or, I wasn't anxious or anything like that. It was just strange. I mean, this has been a strange.
Right. Because I'm sure it affected your thinking, like you said, and you didn't have any dire feelings. However, you did realize that it was something serious, right? You realize, like, somebody just said you didn't have a cold, right? Or not.
I did realize that, but I did not engage with how dangerous it was, right? Like I know that, like, since I've been home, I won't go on the internet and watch. I have not even researched brain tumors on the internet, because I guarantee that all the news is going to be like, this is a video of them taking out a brain tumor, and this is why you're going to die, right? And the doctor said that my tumor was was really strange. It was it seemed to be kind of aggressive and bloody. And I had a meningioma tumor, which is benign,
Okay.
but they're usually not aggressive or bloody, or So I think that the doctor really thought that I had that it was cancerous, and that when I went back to see him, he was like surprised that it had come back benign.
Oh, okay. So that's excellent to hear. I mean,
Yep.
that's really, really good to hear. So is everything out? Are they going to ever have to go back? Is there a chance of it coming back? What is the prognosis for the future?
So he said there's a 5% chance that it could come back. I have to go back in for a CAT scan in a year. So essentially, I just have to not roll one, and I'm fine.
Okay, and what do you know if this is like? How does this particular type of
Meningioma, yeah.
Is this a certain type that is maybe either hereditary or whatever? Do they have any idea of how you may have come down or gotten this tumor?
I didn't ask.
Okay.
I didn't ask. I was just happy that the surgery went well, and that I was, alive and feeling good. So
as we all are, we're all glad you're happy and alive. And then when you came out, you said, it was 6 days recovery before you were able to speak.
Yeah.
You said you were on a walker. Like,
so bad.
So what had happened with that?
They had me in a bed with an alarm, and I had to ring a buzzer to get nursing help. And every day they would, I had super trouble walking for the first 10 days, right? But they would come in and they would have somebody come in and PT you and walk you. Like the first few days, I just sort of walked to the door and then back, and then I walked out the door and down the hallway a little bit and then back. And by the time I left there, I was doing a loop around the whole floor that I was on. And, that was a strange and slow process. Coming home was really the best thing for me. So, because I was able to sort of improve on my own pace, and that helped.
Right. So now, all things considered, out of say a year ago, John being 100%, where would you say you're at right now?
I would say I am 85 to 90% mental back.
Okay.
And I would say that I'm 85% physical back. So I went out yesterday for the first time, and I realized that I was sort of afraid to do, like I had to walk down a little dirt trail to get into this place that I was going to. And I'm like, oh, I'm my footing's a little bit off here. So I am not feeling like I am at 100%. But I did go see the surgeon 2 days ago on Thursday, and I have been cleared for light to normal duty. So he said I could drive, and he said that I can get back to work, take my pace and start living my life again.
Yeah, that I'm gonna tell you, that is so really, really good to hear, John. And I'm so glad you're healthy. I'm so glad you're out of this, and the future looks bright, right? You have no doubt, and I'm sure the doctors have probably informed you by just what I've gathered, what you're saying, that you will be back to 100% relatively soon.
I will be back to 100%. So
fantastic. That is really good, John. I'm so glad. Well, good. So let's get back into you and AEG and all this kind of stuff, because it just makes you feel good, right? Like John
Absolutely.
is happy. He's going at it. So AEG has been around for how long?
Over 20 years. So it's been almost, we started in 1993 or 1994. So I don't know how many years it is since then, but that was when we started. I started the business because I met Jolly Blackburn, who was publishing a small press version of Shadis magazine. And he, we became friends, and I really liked what he was doing, and I always sort of wanted to be in gaming. And so I sort of offered help monetarily and business wise. And I also, I'm in advertising sales. I was in advertising sales when I met him. And I called a bunch of game companies and I said, how come you're not advertising in Shadis magazine? And they said, because it's too small. Like it was a small magazine instead of a standard 8.5 by 11. And I said, so if it was an 8.5 by 11 magazine, you would put ads in it? And they're like, yeah, that's what all of our ads are sized at. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But, I called him back and said, I've started calling game companies and I think I can sell advertising in the magazine. So like we put those two things together, and then AEG was started.
Okay. So technically AEG didn't start as an actual, so if it started as a publishing company, which we know as today in the gaming industry, you were actually a publishing company.
We were Shadis magazine.
Okay.
For a year, maybe 2 years. And then Ryan Dancy owned a small mail order service where he sold the D&D books and other things via mail order. He actually set it up so that he and his friends could get discounted D&D stuff. And it actually turned into a real RPG business. And I sold him an ad, and he came out to Gen Con, and we met there at Gen Con. And that was the same year that Magic the Gathering happened. And we walked around that year we gave away 10,000 copies of Shadis magazine at the show, which was no small feat, right? Because White Wolf had said that they were giving away 10,000 copies of White Wolf magazine every year at the show. And so we stacked up 10,000 copies, and people walk past us and they're like, what is that gigantic stack of magazines? We're like, we're giving away 10,000 magazines here at the show. And after the first day, we had hardly put a dent in it. And so the rest of the convention, my partner Dave and I were running to because, when it was in Indianapolis, people didn't come by your booth. There were gigantic lines of people lined up to play D&D and do things because the convention was spread out outside of the convention center. And so we just grabbed bundles of magazines and found lines and just started giving magazines away to everybody. And by the last day, we had given away, all 10,000 magazines.
Oh, very good. And so real quick, what does Alderac stand for, and how did you come up with the name?
So I didn't come up with the name. That's Jolly's. So that is the name of Jolly's. I want to make sure I get this right. I think that Alderac was the name of Jolly's game world, right? His fantasy Dungeons and Dragons world was Alderac, and Shadis was the goddess of writers and poets, and it was also the name of one of his moons.
Okay, so then you have this magazine. You said that was, so you were really kind of like what is generally known, or 20, 30, a publishing company was magazines and print and literature. So you were in that, you said for like a year, you did the magazine and all that kind of stuff.
We did the magazine we did the magazine for 4 or 5 years, ultimately. 4 or 5 years. So issue number 9 is the one we gave away at Gen Con. And then we did, in our 10th issue, we published the first Magic the Gathering checklist, and we sold all 10,000 copies.
Oh, wow.
There was real demand. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. We're in real business now.
Right.
And so Ryan, who was not my partner, we had walked around and the next year there were crud tons of CCGs at Gen Con. And at that show, we walked around and said, we could do this. We could make our own CCG. And by that time, we had all the sort of moving parts helping us at Alderac. We had, Dave Williams and TJ Trindle, and, we'd met Matt Wilson, and there were, the Wonder Twins. The team was called in. We had all the pieces we needed to make a great CCG.
And what was that?
Huh?
And what was that?
Those Legend of the Five Rings was our, so we whiteboarded out all of our ideas. And the top three ideas was, we want to make a game about samurai, we want to make a game about pirates, we want to make a game about cowboys. And so the game about samurai won out because, everybody on the team wanted to make that game. And we really did have a good team. We had, one of the best writers in the history of the gaming industry in John Wick, one of the best artists in the gaming industry in Matt Wilson. We had Matt Strosik, who was Matt Wilson's friend, who was an amazing, detail-oriented database guy who set up all the stuff we needed to actually make the CCG. We had Dave Williams, who was one of the best designers in the gaming industry when there weren't a lot of designers at that time. And then his friend DJ Trindle had sort of come along, and he was one of the best editors in the gaming industry. And that team, along with me and Ryan and help from other people, we crafted and launched Legend of the Five Rings.
Okay, so I'm interested to know. So your experience, you said, was in advertising, and this seems like a pretty ambitious project. But not only was it an ambitious project, but it seemed you had the right pieces. So what was it about John Zinser's previous experience or previous life that people were either you came to you or you were able to get this group together that you said all of the right people, and it's kind of like the first major project, you had the exact right pieces in place. How do you think that happened and came together?
It was luck. It was just luck. So the Dave Williams story is that we went to the local LA convention and we put up handwritten signs that said, "Game company needs an intern. Call this number." And we had 6 people. We were operating out of an apartment in Corona, and we had 6 people show up for the interview, and one of them showed up wearing a tie. And so when the interviews were done, I was asked, well, who do we think should be the intern? And I said, how about the guy that wore the tie, right? He took it serious. And, that was Dave Williams. And, his buddy DJ, who like Dave started coming to the office and I was, working with him and packing boxes, and we were talking about CCGs. And then his buddy DJ started coming to the house, just started showing up. And he started working with Jolly on the magazine, and we were broke. We didn't have any money. We were paying, pennies. It's just enough money for gas to get to the office, and it just started growing from there, right? So we I don't remember how we met John Wick. But I know we met Matt through working at a local game store, and we just started. We were like a magnet for talent. They just started showing up because I think that they felt that something magical was about to happen.
Right.
And, I think the most magical thing about L5R is that the storyline, the interactive storyline, that was always meant to be a marketing hook. It was not meant to be, part of the gameplay initially. Okay. And it became our signature move, right? Like so many people were excited about having, the ability to touch and change a storyline. And that it worked great for us through, 3 or 4, games. And those games all had longer lifespans than the standard CCG.
Yeah, and I was going to just ask you about that too, because you said this was in the era post Magic, I don't mean post Magic, but post the introduction of Magic, when all of a sudden there's all these CCGs, everybody wants to catch that lightning in a bottle. Why do you think L5R was different? And not only that, it has still stood the test of time.
Well, I think that we succeeded in the face of all of those people, so when we started working on our games, printing a CCG was like printing money. Like you literally could just release it, and there was some total crap that was being released, and they were selling a bunch of cases. We had big orders for L5R, and so when we finally printed, we had a print run coming in, and then the first market crash happened, and I watched our sales drop by 200 cases a week.
Wow.
For 6 weeks, while we were waiting for that ship to arrive. And we finally got it, and we shipped it to the distributors, and we were broke, right? We were in debt and broke, and doing L5R actually killed my partnership with Jolly. It was super stressful. We made aggressive and bad decisions, which, now that I know better, I probably wouldn't have made those decisions, how businesses operate. And
it's 2020, right? Yeah.
It caused a huge rift between Jolly and I. And so, about the time that we were launching L5R, we launched L5R, but it launched just enough to be sort of successful. But we didn't have money to market it. That was the same time that Zev was doing Shadow Fist. And I remember opening up the Scry magazine that, like, I don't know if you remember the ad that was like the 3-fold ad that came out that had that chick flying through the air, doing the flying kick. Like, I just sat at home and called Ryan, and I'm like, how are we going to compete? It's a $10,000 ad. We can't run a $300 ad. And so our tactic was demos and sampling.
Okay.
So we the first year that we brought sample decks to Gen Con, we were all sort of prepared to do demos, and people sat down and they liked the game enough that they asked us to play again, and we said, well, you can play again, but you have to teach somebody. And from there, our bounty hunter program, our demo program happened. And we sort of saw the magic in demos and deck sampling. So over the course of the life of all the games that we did, I gave over. So this question was, how did my marketing affect my business? The marketing affected the business because we gave away over 1 million decks, while between L5R, Warlord, 7th Sea, and Doomtown. Sort of compiled in those games, we gave away 1 million decks. Like, we were sampling, and I would walk through the office and say, sampling works if your product doesn't suck. Make sure you make me a good product, and I will sample the hell out of it, and we will, we'll do well. So we got a reorder from, I don't remember which distributor it was, and it was an interesting moment because they said, I haven't reordered a new CCG for over a year. L5R is the first CCG that I am reordering. And, that was sort of the tip of the mountain. And we plateaued there for a while, but it was our hard work. We were the only company really focused on demos.
Right.
And we were hyper focused on demos. Every person at the company, Dave, me, Ryan, like, we were doing demos everywhere. And so that turned into the other marketing thing, which I had thought make L5R a success, is that once we realized demos were working, we basically told stores, if they buy a package, we'll guarantee that they will get a demo. Because we had a bunch of fans that were willing to go out and do stuff, and Ryan had brought on one of his employees from his old business. Her name was Mindy Sherwood Lewis, but we called her Mouse, and she was the brains and behind the demo program. We would stores, they would send us the list of stores that had participated. We'd send that list to Mindy, and she was in touch with all of our demo people at a time when the internet wasn't right. The internet wasn't what it was now. We didn't have forums and things. So she actively made sure that those demos happened. And then anywhere that we had staff, like, so any LA demos, we were out doing demos, every weekend, 2 days a week.
Oh, okay. Oh, very good. So I'm also wondering, you mentioned broke. a couple times during this,
Oh,
how you have money and stuff. But so what I'm wondering is, were you full into the company, or did you still have a part-time job, or like how did that transition come about?
I was full into the company. Yeah, I was full into the company by that time. When I first started the Shadis thing, I was sort of double dipping, and I was still selling my golf marketing. But after we sold the 10,000 issues with the magic in it, I basically called my dad and said, Dad, I'm going to do this full time. I know it's going to break your heart because that means no more free golf, but I think I'm going to make enough money that I can just pay for it. And he always thought that I was crazy. So I don't know if I've ever told this part of the story. We had a big debt to our printer. So we flew to Texas and met with Katie Yaquinto and her father, who ran Yaquinto Printing. And we got a tour of their thing, and then we sat down and we told them our vision for what we were going to do. And then we had to say that we don't have a ton of money, so we'll have to pay for this, after we sell this product. We'll be able to pay you. We could pay them some, but we could not pay them for the entire print run. And Mr. Yaquinto, after we had done this thing, he looked at his daughter and he said, I like these boys. I think I'm going to print their game. And
wow, that's really cool.
We had a great working relationship with him and then with Katie for years, until Katie sold her business to it might have been Cardamundi or something like that. Mm-hmm. And we owed the printer quite a bit of money. We owed I needed to borrow money from my parents. Ryan needed to borrow money from his parents. Because even though I had a sort of hand to mouth marketing business where I was making enough money to live a decent life, I was never a real saver. And so we borrowed from everywhere, and that was one of the big things that killed our partnership. We got way over $500,000 in debt, and Jolly would wake up every morning and be like, excuse my language, sorry.
I'll beat that out.
we are screwed, and so the stress of being so far in debt, and then fighting our way through the first CCG crash, and there were two good CCG crashes while we were doing CCGs, and then a third that sort of finally killed the business. And at some point, Jolly and I just said, listen, we need to split this up. I'll take the debt, and you take Knights of the Dinner Table, which had sort of started, and which was obviously going to be a big deal. And then we decided that we were going to keep that we would keep publishing Shadis until we had a specific release date, and then we got 50 issues of Shadis published. And then we stopped it and offered it to give it back to Jolly, but he was already publishing Knights of the Dinner Table and selling gazillion copies. And so our breakup was not good.
Oh,
it was not. It was not like, yeah. It was your classic like business partners who really liked each other. Now we're just pissed, and it stayed that way for years until we were running we would run big events every year for Legend of the Five Rings and for our other games. And for 1 year, we brought in taiko drummers to Gen Con, which was loud and sort of obnoxious. And they put us in this big room with neighbors, right? And so I went over to our first neighbor and I said, listen, we're starting this up at 9 o'clock and there's going to be drummers. It's going to be loud. And they were like, oh yeah, no worries. And then I walked to the other neighbor, and it was Jolly. They were doing a live read of Knights of the Dinner Table, and I went in and I tried to grab his partner and say, hey, we want to know when you guys are going to be done, because we're going to have taiko drummers, and we don't want the drummers to screw up your event in any way. And Jolly's new partner was like, John, come in. We're doing a live reading of Knights of the Dinner Table. You need to get up on stage and you need to do a reading of the gazebo. And I'm like, I didn't come here to do that. I just came here to tell you that we're going to have drummers next door. And they pushed me up on stage with Jolly, and everybody clapped, and then they hot mic'd me, and we read the gazebo, and I had never seen anything like that. A live reading is you actually just read the comic book in order, right. And the people who were in that, I mean, it was a packed house, as big a packed house as it was for us. And they absolutely loved it, and I butchered it, right? Like I read it at the wrong time, and when we were done, Jolly and I walked down, the back stairs, and we had a moment where I said, I'm living my best life because of you, right? Like, because I met you, and because we partnered up, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. And he's like, yeah, he says, my life is pretty amazing too. He says, it turned out that all of that stuff was, just a path to us, having, two great businesses. And it turns out either he or I was still on the mic. And so everybody in the room heard it.
Oh, wow. Wow. So when you were pushed up on stage, that was literally the first time, like, you had this sort of acrimonious relationship, right? A breakup or whatever. Yeah. And that was, you just like were literally thrown together like that?
We had still sort of been in contact a little bit but it was never really amicable. And so, that was, it was fun and it was funny. And, when we came out from behind the screen, Jolly's fans gave us a standing ovation.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's, and so your relationship today is still good?
Our relationship today is still good. Yes.
Oh,
it's still good. So all's well that ends well.
Right. Man, that's such a fascinating story. That's so interesting. And that's really cool. So I want to ask you then about the card publishing, because you mentioned all these titles and the L5R, of course. So initially, was AEG for how many years, whatever, just specifically a card or CCG publishing company?
We did, I think we did 9 different CCGs. The most famous of which are L5R and Doomtown and 7th Sea. We also did role-playing game products that were associated with the worlds that we had developed. So we did an L5R role-playing game, and we did a 7th Sea role-playing game. We did a Warlord role-playing game, a D20 product. We were opportunistic as a publisher. We really sort of took hold of the D20 opportunity, and we did micro adventures, and then we did the world's largest dungeon. But we were mainly a CCG business, and we started seeing the writing on the wall. We did CCGs for like 10 years, and then we decided that the industry was starting to shift to board games. And so we decided that we were going to make board games. And so we went to, what's his name? The biggest German game designer.
Klaus Tuber with Catan?
No. It was wow, why can't I think of his name? That's the tumor, right? Like I'm blaming the tumor. That's the 10% that's not back yet.
Oh, that's right. We can get to that in a second. Maybe his name will come up, because I want to ask you, because you said you were kind of getting out of the CCG before you get into the board games. And so I was wondering, because I would like to know, I'm interested, and I'm sure other gamers in the industry, I want to know from a backstage viewpoint, So obviously there came a point where you sold L5R, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you could tell us, I'd like to know the whole process. Do they approach you? Do you approach them? How do you do it? How does everything go into selling a tremendously successful product?
Wasn't successful when we sold it the
Oh,
first time. So here's the fast story. So when at some point we decided that the CCG business should be its own company, and we created Five Rings Publishing Group. We needed more money, and we went out looking for investors, and we found some, but we also found a partner. His name was Bob, and he was he did sales for TSR quite a while ago, and he was very connected to the investors in Seattle, and so he invested a little bit and came in and wanted to be actively involved in Five Rings Publishing, and so like we were sort of desperate, so we needed money to get a set, off the presses, and so we made a deal with Bob to have him come in, and Bob was a go-getter, right? Like he was all gas, no brake, and I always have a heavy foot on the brake, and so Bob actually brought in. He was like, okay, you guys need to write a business plan, and we're going to bring in investors, and we're going to have you pitch, to these investors, and we're going to get some more money to really do our business. And he said, dream big, right? Like write a business plan that investors want to be told that they're going to make a lot of money. Give me a business plan that is going to help us, will show that we're going to make a lot of money and that we can actually do to make a lot of money. And so Ryan and I wrote a really detailed, really like good plan for how a company could grow over 3 to 5 years into a CCG powerhouse by doing, one new game a year and building to a place where they had, a CCG with, they were releasing a new product every month, and they, we would build up we build up our demo program, we build up our business, around, multiple CCGs. And so Bob brought in, a room of investors, and Ryan and I gave our pitch, and, we were really happy. We thought we'd done a good job. And Bob turns on the lights and he's like, what did I tell you? Aren't these kids great? They're visionaries. They are going to make things happen. He says, here's my idea. We take their business plan to do this in 5 years, and we take your money and we run your money towards a cliff. We're going to do that whole thing in a year. And in a year, we're either going to fly, or we're going to crash and burn, but it's going to be spectacular. Okay. And, like these guys are obviously the right guys. And, like with your money, I think that we can expedite this plan and build a great company. And to a man, every investor in the room said, yeah, we want to do that. And I went, what? You want to run your money? I mean, I didn't say it out loud, but I was thinking, you want to run your money towards a cliff? I got Ryan and afterwards, I'm like, what just happened? Like, did they just all agree to invest in this business if we run their money towards a cliff? And Ryan's like, I think that's what happened. Yes.
So what happened for the next year then? So what happened? So
the problem is, so we bought a couple of CCGs. We bought Rage. We bought the Dune CCG from Christian Moore's company. We were developing our own games, and the key to making the plan work was you had to make great games, right? You had to have games that people actually wanted, and we the games that we brought in were good, but I don't know if they were great. And so we took that investment money, we brought in staff at Five Rings Publishing Group, and we ran that money towards a cliff. And at the end of the year, at the end of the time that we were with Bob, we had run out of money. And Ryan and I had, the deal we had with the company is that we get our properties back if the business goes bust. So I was sitting in LA and I was told, yeah, we're out of money. Five Ring Publishing's in big trouble. You need to fly up here. And I said, okay, great. So, I flew up with every intention of, them closing down the business and, AEG taking back, Legend of the Five Rings and the game that we were working on. And so, we get into the room with Bob and Bob says, we can't go back to the investors and ask them for more money because, our plan has basically failed. And I was like, yeah, it has. He's like, so we have to do something bigger. He's like, we're going to buy TSR. He says, TSR's in trouble. We know that they're in trouble.
Uh-huh.
Our pitch to investors is we're going to buy TSR.
Wow.
And I'm like, really? Like, we're going to buy TSR? And he just put his arm around me and he's like, John, you need to get on the road. You need to keep this business open for 2 more months. Like, you just need to get on a plane and go visit distributors and get them to take as much product as they can. And so Ryan and I had a powwow there in Seattle. And I said, I guess I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to go sell product, hopefully. And so I called a bunch of distributors and, I flew on the plane and I sold as much product as I could. I ran demos in their states. We ran specials. I went all over the country. I ended up in War Games West. It was in New Mexico. And I ended up, my last stop on the trip was New Mexico. And I remember getting a call from Bob. So Ryan actually flew out to TSR to look at their books. So every night I would talk to Ryan and Ryan would say, wow, this business is it's in real trouble. We actually have a chance of buying this. And I'm like, that's crazy. I started in this business because I love Dungeons and Dragons and now we're going to buy it. Right. It was weird. Right. And so I basically told Bob, I said, listen, I'm good at what I'm doing here selling this CCG, but like Dungeons and Dragons, it's huge. It's being sold in bookstores and in places that I don't have any clue how to sell. And he was just so lax. He's like, you're a great salesman. You'll figure it out, John. It's okay. I'm like, oh my God, that is, so weird. So we got back. And so he called me down at War Games West and he's like, you need to come home. We're going to run out of money this week. And I was like, oh, okay. We're not going to buy TSR. So we're going to run out of money. So I flew back to Seattle and I found out when I got there that the plan was to contact Peter, who loved Dungeons and Dragons. And the person that owned D&D hated Peter because she blamed him for her business woes because, Magic had done such a business to the business. And so we had a first right of refusal document. And so we called Peter and said, we need you to bring us $1 million today. I didn't say that. I don't have the balls to say that to anybody, but
Right.
Bob said, you're going to send us $1 million today, Peter. And he's like, no, we're not. And he says, I've got something that you want. And do you have a fax machine there? And Peter's like, yeah, I got a fax machine. He's like, all right, I'm going to fax you this thing. And then we're going to start talking turkey. So he faxes him the first page of our right to buy TSR. And he says, we want to broker a deal so that you buy TSR, but you have to buy Five Rings Publishing. For X amount of dollars, right? That was so we said you have to buy Five Rings Publishing for X amount of dollars, and you need to bring us $1 million today. So 4 hours later, there was a person in our office with $1 million check.
Are you serious? Really?
I'm serious, as a brain tumor. Yes.
Wow.
I could not believe it. And the funny part is that, like, Bob's like, deposit that money, let's start running towards the cliff again. And Ryan and I were like, whoa, stop running towards the cliff. The cliff thing doesn't work.
Yeah, but wait a second. No, I was just going to say that $1 million obviously had to go back to pay people, or no? Like, you didn't.
So there's no doubt that Five Rings Publishing had debt as well.
Okay.
And so, Ryan and I said, we are going to run this business the way we have been running it when we don't have money in the bank until, and he's like, they're not going to buy us. That's not going to happen. I'm like, we're going to run the business the way we have been running the business until we find out if they're going to buy us, because that $1 million is not investors' money. That's our money. So we ran the business, for I don't know how long it was. I feel like maybe it was a month to 2 months, and we brokered the deal. And obviously, history is that Wizards of the Coast buys TSR, and then the accountants for Wizards show up at our office and they say, okay, we need to see your books. We need to figure out how much you're worth so that we can buy you. And Bob was like, well, you're going to buy us for X. And they're like, we don't know what your company's worth yet. We don't know what we're going to pay for it. And he's like, it's in the contract right here. If you buy TSR, you buy Five Rings Publishing for X. And they were pissed. They were pissed at Peter for making that deal, right? Like, he was so excited to get his hands on TSR.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, John, because this is fascinating, because these are like little things in the gaming industry that you don't know a lot. So you actually, the deal was set. You owned TSR.
No, we did not own TSR. We had not bought TSR. What we said is that we're going to help broker the deal, because you and I think her name was Elaine cannot, like, you hate each other.
Okay.
And so we're going to make this deal happen because we know how much trouble they're in. And
I see. Okay.
And so Bob was sort of the pendulum point for making that deal happen. And so, when it was over, they bought Five Rings Publishing. So Ryan went to work for him.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of went to work for him for a year. I still owned AEG, so it was like letting the fox into the hen house, right? So I don't think anybody ever really trusted me at that company, other than Rich Fukutaki, who was the head of new brands. And he, so I worked in the sales department for a while, but I was sort of commuting. I would fly up there, and when I worked in sales, they gave me the three crappiest distributors to take care of. And I'm like, I'm currently taking care of all of the distributors for my products, right? Like this is like 3 hours work. And then after that didn't work out for a while, they moved me to the marketing department, and the marketing department did not, they were not happy with the fact that I owned my own company. And then they moved me to the new games department. And literally what I did was play finger football. And when I went up there, I was like, I'm like, do I need to be here for this? This is crazy. Like, is this department actually making any new games, or what is going on? So I got a paycheck for a year, and then Rich Fukutaki came into my office. He says, it's been a year. I think that's probably enough. And I'm like, I'm surprised it went for a year.
but wait a second, John. So, okay. So, I know, people always like to say, oh, I have no regrets. I go through life, I have no regrets. But when you said, you're comfortable now in life, you have a successful, bubble, you have all these, you are where you are. But looking back, that moment, do you ever wish you may have actually bought TSR, or were you happy with your decision?
Well, there was no way we could have bought TSR. They wanted a big number for that business, and their debt service was bigger than that number. We could get the number together, we couldn't figure out how to get a number big enough to pay all of the debt that they had. It was beyond it was beyond our ability. So I don't know what direction my life would have taken if TSR had actually been purchased by us. I think it would have been. I think it could have been. It could have been better. It could have been worse. I mean, who knows? Like, if the team that we had that was running people's money towards a cliff was not succeeding. So I know that for Ryan it worked out. It worked out perfect. He went to work for TSR, and then Peter brought some people in to work on third edition, and they were failing to give Peter a product that he wanted, and Ryan had a vision for it, and he was ultimately put in charge of launching third edition D&D. And like we all know that was a huge success. I mean, he was in his element, and he loved it. So I would never wish to take that away from
right
my best friends in the entire world. And I went south to AEG, and we still had a design contract with Wizards of the Coast for L5R and other stuff that we were doing.
Okay, but so I want to ask you, John. So you're at a point in your career. I just want to kind of also get in your head a little bit, because you're at a point in your career, like you said, these sort of fascinating things are all coming together. You've just been presented, or the talk around is buying TSR, and you already said that just kind of blow your mind. You're like, and then you're sitting in an office and you get a check for $1 million. So what? And at the same time, you've been like, I don't know if it was technically bankrupt, but hurting for money, getting money. So you're at both ends of the extreme, this tremendous turmoil in your career, in your life. So you have extreme highs, extreme. How was it dealing with all of that?
Well, we've been friends for a while, Tim. I think that I'm sort of an eternal optimist. So even during the bad times, I was super optimistic about, what I was going to do on a specific day or what was going to happen.
Oh, John, are you still there? Did I lose you?
Oh, there we go.
If
Five Rings Publishing failed, I would get L5R back, and we would just retool it and keep going from there. So, the funny part of the story is that, so I don't know, a year after the deal happened, my good friend Luke, who actually had been brought in to run Legends of Five Rings, fired AEG from designing the game.
Oh, okay.
And that was not great, right? And I was able to go to my staff and say, listen, we just got fired because we're doing a crappy job, and we are. Like we were sort of phoning it in, and we deserved to lose that contract, and that was real dangerous for us because that contract was a big part of how we were able to keep the business open and going. So so we got fired, and then I don't know, like Luke and I sort of had a fight over it, and then like 5 months later, Luke got me on the phone and says, I can't believe I have to make this phone call. He says, Wizards of the Coast just told me I have to sell Legend of the Five Rings.
They said they had to sell?
Yeah. So they made a decision internally that they were not focused enough on the cash cows, and that they needed to get rid of all of the non-cash cows, which included L5R.
Okay.
So they contacted us. There were 3 interested parties. It was us and White Wolf and one other company that was like a distribution house or whatever. And it was, have we been talking for an hour? Wow, I love to ramble about this stuff.
Oh, keep going. And the thing, no, John. So just so you know, I just want to go ahead is what we're probably going to do is, I don't want to put a lot of stress on you. I don't want to. I mean, I could sit here for hours, but I just want to. Yeah, I just want to go ahead and we'll end here, and then maybe a month or two or further down the road, I'm writing all these notes. We can pick it up, and I'd like to pick it up from there. I know exactly where we're stopping, but yeah, let's go ahead and kind of close it up right here.
Yeah. So this is an interesting. This is a fun story. So it was us and it was White Wolf and this other company, and we put together our best possible offer that we could put together for it, and we were sort of the leader in the clubhouse, but there were a bunch of White Wolf people who were seeded into Wizards of the Coast. So they definitely had the upper hand as far as, people, whispering in the king's ear, you should sell this game to White Wolf. You should sell it to White Wolf. And so like Luke and I were talking almost every day, and then those calls stopped happening, and the deal had not happening yet. And so my spidey sense was tingling that we no longer were the leader in the clubhouse. And so I finally got Luke. Luke was like sort of avoiding talking to me because he knew that the news was not good. And so I got him on the phone, and I'm like, I get the feeling that we're no longer the leader in the clubhouse to get this game. I said, I don't think that's your fault. So but if we're getting outbid, I want an opportunity to match that bid. I want to like this is our game. Like we made it. It came out of my brain, right? Like, I said, you need to get me a meeting with all the decision makers, and I need to be able to talk to them. And so, so he said, all right, I'll see what I can do. And so he got all of the muckety mucks, Peter and the guy that was running the company, and, like 10 people in, like a conference call. And he's like, okay, I've got everybody. You're going to be able to pitch the whole team on why you should get, L5R back. And so there was sort of a lead up to this call, and I got really worked up prior to the call happening. And when the call finally happened, I sort of started off at a 2 and quickly accelerated to an 11. By the time I started saying, the history here is that we made this game, and we think that we should have first right of refusal to get it back, and we should be able to match any deal that was put on the table. And then, my voice started getting louder, and I was like, by the end, I was cursing, and I was like, if you're going to sell this game to anybody else, you effing better sell it to us. It was so unprofessional. Like, it was bad. And at the end of my tirade, I was thinking, well, that's it. We're not getting this game back. And somebody in the room said, yeah, that sounds about right, John. And so like, I was like, okay, thanks. And so the call ended, and I talked to Luke 30 minutes later, and he's like, that was unbelievable. You're getting L5R back. I'm like, well, what's the deal we have to match? And he told us what White Wolf had offered. And I said, I can't offer that. Like, there's no way I can match that deal. He's like, tell me what you can do. So I sort of broke it up into bite-sized chunks and figured out how we could buy it over time. And I sent it to him, and I said, here you go. This is the best we can do. And he's like, it's unbelievable. He's like, they're going to say yes to you no matter what at this point. Like, your passion sold them on this deal happening. So we got L5R back. And we kept it for, another 10 years, right? We ran L5R, which, when we do the second interview, we'll talk about that. But we ran L5R while we were becoming a board game company. And there's, the story of how that sort of imploded, and we ended up selling it again. Will be one of the things that we talk about when we talk again.
Absolutely. Well, John, so yes, absolutely, because there's just so much more. I've got all the notes. I'll make sure I'll save them here. But first of all, I just want to say how happy I am. I'm sure everybody in the industry is so happy that you're healthy. You came out of this. I'm so glad to hear that you feel you're about 85 to 90% back, both mentally and physically. And we are all just right behind you to get you back to 100% and looking so forward to it. And we're glad that everything worked out well.
Well, I'm glad I talked. I'm glad I talked for the first time about it on your show. This is really nice. Very professional. Well done.
Oh, well, thank you, John. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And again, we got so much more. You're such a vault of knowledge in the gaming industry, and I've got so many more questions to ask you and stuff. But please take care of yourself. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to get together and play some games soon. But I really appreciate that, and we'll talk to you soon. Well, thank you for joining us for that wonderful interview with John Zinser, and we're so glad that he is recuperating and he's on the fast track to getting back to 100%. So if you like these videos, please do us a favor and go ahead and subscribe. And if you'd like to get notified, make sure you ring that bell and turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching.